A child pianist prodigy plays a melody at a recital that moves a billionaire to tears and disbelief. His late wife's unique composition that only she could have created. Or, before we dive in, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Support the channel, then sit back, relax, and enjoy. Clara had decided to embrace the wildness of Leo's hair. It didn't. No matter how many times she wet it, combed it, or bribed him to wear a hat, it always popped back up, showing its spirited nature. Thoughts that morning she'd noticed him cheerfully dipping toast crust in his orange juice, while humming something lively and exciting at the kitchen table. He called it the adventure of the breakfast. Nights, and she allowed him to continue until he knocked his glass over with a flourish, still humming that tune as she dropped him off at Mrs. Danley's charming bungalow-turned-piano studio. A cozy little house with flourishing rose bushes that appeared. With a hint of determination, Leo dashed to the porch, his backpack trailing behind him and one shoelace flapping in the breeze. Flapping, Clara honked once the signal for Tiger's shoe, and with a cheerful wave, he assured her he wasn't buying cereal this week. Without looking, already halfway through another invented song, Mrs. Annesley welcomed him at the door with a warm presence that felt inviting. She appeared like a refreshing breeze, wearing her usual faded cardigan, spectacles perched low on her nose, and an expression that suggested she was ready for a more exciting adventure. "Morning. You're 5 minutes late," she said, not looking up from her tea. "I'm 4 minutes and 30 seconds later." With a flair for the dramatic, Leo stepped inside, stomped across the creaky floor, and dropped his things in a heap by the piano bench. Mrs. Annesley watched him with a smile, with a hint of caution. Much like one would feel for a cat near a priceless vase, Leo cracked his knuckles and then his neck, ready to embrace whatever came next. Cracked his toes, which made her smile, and then dramatically plunked out the opening bars of Furious, but with a sudden, in the midst of the conversation, a surprising interruption echoed like a tyrannosaurus making its grand entrance at a wedding. Mrs. Annesley sighed. "That's not Beethoven. That's Beethoven. Having an adventurous time being chased by dinosaurs while stuck in traffic." "Dinosaurs were passionate," Leo explained. "It's a heartfelt topic. Realism, you're going to be the end of me. You said that last week, and I truly meant it then." She stood behind him, tapping the metronome with a spirited determination, as if it had playfully challenged her. Leo embraced the click, click, click and started again, this time replacing the final note of each phrase with an intense glissando that surprised her each time. "Leo, yes, I'm not madam. All right, Captain." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Listen, focus on this. The recital is a vibrant showcase, not just a simple backyard lemonade stand for your imagination. It's the city coming alive through performance. Exciting possibilities for lighting programs at the Arts Center with the grand piano." Press. Leo brightened up. "Press like cameras. Maybe I can get a costume, but definitely not a cape." She walked away without answering. It wasn't that Leo was trying to be difficult. He just couldn't help himself. Music to him was like breathing, vibrant, unfiltered, and always evolving. Sheet music seemed like a unique opportunity, like a glimpse into someone else's creative journey on a page that sparked curiosity. But let him sit at a piano, and he'd create entire worlds, each key sharing a unique story. Some days, his fingers would create something so unique and intriguing that he would take a moment afterward, marveling at its origin. Clara had always told him his brain worked like a kite, soaring in the strong wind, challenging to hold on to, but truly beautiful once you let it take flight. Enrolled him in lessons after discovering his talent for creating something intricate and captivating at age 6 with a toy keyboard. With a broken G key, Mrs. Annesley was the only teacher in town who could handle him, mostly because of her incredible determination. She had threatened to quit many times before. But just one more spaceship sound effect, and I know it will be an exciting turn of events. "I'm retiring again." That was her phrase. She'd enjoyed retirement 3 times already. Plunked through something vaguely showish with intriguing pauses for alien sound effects, she tapped his shoulder with a rolled-up program from last year's recital. "Let's keep creating our own planets." Whispered, "Play the music." "I don't just want to hear it. I want to truly feel it and embrace that feeling." It quietly and in the correct key. When he finally decided to take a break from pushing her buttons, he stopped playing and swiveled on the bench. "So, what's this recital all about?" Mrs. Anansley adjusted her glasses, excited for the big event. The city is excited to host a fundraising gala for the Arts Center, a full-house black tie event. Genuine stage contributors. The efforts he embraced. Donors, especially those with significant resources, can make a big impact, like a prominent figure from a corporate board. There's a member who remains unnamed for now, but he's generously contributing half the funding for the new music wing. Leo nodded slowly. So the Illuminati? No. Leo, right? Right, probably. Just a time-traveling art thief. Got it. She overlooked that you're playing third. Only a maximum of 4 classical selections, please. Let's keep it pure and uplifting, without any growling. Involving spaceships, no cape, but no cape. Leo slumped like a deflated balloon. But they worked through 2 more standard recital pieces before he found his interest waning again. He floated into a melody he'd been crafting gently over the past few weeks, embracing the mystery of its origin. Began with a few gentle notes, perhaps a touch wistful, but then blossomed into something warmer, almost like the way light transforms late in the day. He embraced the moment, fully immersed in his actions. Just let it play. Mrs. Anansley, halfway through lecturing him about pedal control, stopped cold. Where did you learn? He discovered what that piece was. He blinked, and I'm not sure why, but I've been hearing it a lot lately. She stepped forward. It's interesting how I can hear it in my head, especially when things are unusually quiet. I suppose it happens sometimes in my sleep. It's as if small pieces of it come to me, and I make an effort to hold on to them, even though she didn't speak for a while, just watched his hands rest lightly on the keys. Can you play it? Once more, she inquired, and he simply shrugged. I can give it a shot. It varies at times. He began anew at a more relaxed pace. The melody flowed softly, as if it were being unwrapped. Mrs. Anansley didn't speak until it was over. Bring that next week, she said. Polish it. Leo tilted his head. You said no original pieces, but that was before. I heard that when he raised his eyebrows, he smiled and said I could wear the cape. When Clara picked him up 10 minutes later, he ran to the car with a bounce in his step. How was practice? She asked while tossing a water bottle over the seat. I broke Beethoven. And then I made Mrs. Anansley gazes into the distance, embracing the possibilities of a typical Thursday. I believe I'll dive into some fun activities. Something unusual at the recital. Like truly unusual, but in a good way, Clara. She glanced at him in the rearview mirror. You've never played anything not weird? Then I'm doing great so far. She smiled. He reached back to ruffle his already chaotic hair, ducking and laughing, kicking his legs against the seat with joy, humming that melody he couldn't name, the one that kept finding its way back to him. Clara had barely parked the car when Leo flung the door open and darted out, still humming that delightful tune, the one Mrs. Anansley had asked him to bring it again, and he played it nonstop all weekend. The piano whistled through his cereal spoon, and he even tapped it against the table legs until Clara gently reminded him that it wasn't quite the right time. Every surface was eager to join the percussion section, and the melody seemed to embrace him, as if it were patiently anticipating its moment to be finished, and he was excited about the possibilities, even if he wasn't sure how or if he wanted to figure it out. It turned out that was part of the fun across town. Alexander Reed leaned against the polished counter inside a bakery filled the air with the delightful scent of cinnamon, and he arrived just 3 minutes after opening, looking forward to his assistance, hoping the instructions were followed for an early pickup with no substitutions, and feeling positive about having paid in advance. The clerk cheerfully let him know that they didn't do pre-orders, and she was unfazed by whether he was the governor or a movie star. Someone who owned an app, she pointed to the display case and said, "Take a number." He did, though not quietly. Jordan, his assistant, leaned beside him, scrolling through emails on his phone as they both navigated the breakfast purgatory. I'm not trying to buy the bakery, Alexander said with a hint of excitement as she offered you a lemon tart. I don't want a scone. I want efficiency. Jordan didn't look up, but that's okay. The person who encouraged us to support local businesses, I meant to say, let's write them a check. Jordan smiled, feeling a sense of patience as he waited behind 3 tourists engaged in a lively debate about frosting. You're adapting. I'm so proud. Alexander scowled, but took the tart when it was offered. At last, it was his turn. The box had a charmingly crooked look, and the frosting on top had a delightful slouch. One side seemed to have somewhere exciting to be. Later that morning, he stepped out of his car and came face to face with the. Once more, the goose hissed at him from the edge of the parking lot, flapping its wings with the spirited energy of a challenger in a lively bar fight. "You again," he said. Jordan stayed inside the car. "Let's not provoke it. Remembers people I haven't interacted with. You parked in its spot last time. This week, there's a bird, quite a charming one." Alexander gave it a wide berth, muttering about it. The town's municipal pest control seemed puzzling, with no valet service or pre-orders, and geese around everywhere. He couldn't quite grasp how people lived like this, yet for 3 days. He found himself in this situation thanks to his circumstances. Role on the board of the Eden Brook Arts Foundation and the recital he was looking forward to attending. Performing Arts Center was newer than he expected. Clean lines and glass walls that caught the morning sun. It didn't reek of budget cuts that was promising. He walked through the lobby with quick, purposeful steps, ignoring the cheerful flyers for puppet shows and community theater. He pushed open the door to the auditorium. The lights were off, but music drifted in from the back of the stage, soft and uncertain, like someone testing a thought out loud. He paused at the threshold. A boy sat at the piano, legs crossed, ready to create something beautiful. Swinging a little beneath the bench, hair in a delightful state of rebellion, the tune had its own charm, not polished, but full of character. Stumbled once or twice, paused mid-phrase as if the player was anticipating something wonderful to arrive, even though it didn't. The imperfections that captivated Alexander where he stood were truly the melody itself. Recognizable not by name, but by something far deeper. He understood that pattern, the rise and fall, the way it paused for a brief moment before realizing he had heard that before, years ago. In the next room, late at night. As night fell, he felt a tightening in his chest, but with a blink, he took a step back, ready to embrace whatever came next before the boy could react. Turn around. Jordan, standing just behind him now, raised an eyebrow. "Raised, you all right?" Alexander didn't answer. He shook his head and walked on. Jordan followed toward the lobby again, embracing the journey in the car. Alexander gazed ahead as the goose playfully pecked at the tires. "That song," he remarked, and Jordan tilted his head in curiosity. Was the one the kid was playing good? It felt like home. Jordan waited for more, but nothing arrived at the hotel. Later, Alexander sat in his room. He decided to skip the TV and opened his laptop, excitedly clicking through a folder he hadn't explored in years. It was named Isabel Archive, and inside were subfolders filled with recordings, letters, and drafts. Scores of scraps from the scanned manuscript paper, filled with scribbled notes. He opened a file, labeled Sketch Final Piece, and enjoyed the audio, which featured just Isabel's voice, humming a sequence of notes and then stopping to laugh about forgetting how it ended. But the notes didn't quite match, almost perfectly. He closed the file and gently rubbed the bridge of his nose. 12 years ago, she began composing something special that she never finished. She hadn't played it for him yet, believing it wasn't quite ready. Mentioned it was for a future time, but that future never arrived. He had hidden it all away. He captured every recording, every echo of her in their home after she passed, and he boxed them up. It all came together and remained untouched. Music had been her world, while he had ventured on. In the midst of meetings, acquisitions, and deadlines, the boy played it beautifully, even though he hadn't asked for his name. The recital was just around the corner. Days would reveal the truth. And perhaps it was merely a delightful coincidence, a shared phrasing that connected them. Similar rhythm, or perhaps his mind was weaving memories into the present like shadows reaching out. At sunset, he still couldn't stop hearing that same unfinished line, the one that lingered in the air. Isabel had hummed when she thought no one was listening, and he reassured himself that he was simply being overly sensitive. It may not have meant much, but he chose not to open another file. That night, he didn't check his email or review the proposal Jordan had sent him. Just sat in the quiet and let the music echo faint and impossible, as if someone had opened a window in a house he thought was sealed forever. Alexander hadn't slept much the night before, but he was ready to face whatever came next. He reassured himself it was just the hotel pillow or the goose outside his window making noise at strange times. But a deeper truth had begun to emerge, more substantial than that melody. The incomplete one he hadn't listened to in over 10 years, echoed in his mind on repeat. Didn't share with Jordan? Didn't follow up. and didn't even attempt to discover the boys. He thought it might seem a bit silly, but he just needed to get through it. The recital was lovely, and everyone clapped politely before heading home. One coincidence was just that, a coincidence, and it didn't hold any significance for him. He reminded himself of that once more while adjusting the collar of his shirt in the mirror for the third time across town. Clara stood in front of Leo with a mini lint roller and a determined expression. He was wearing a crisp white shirt and navy slacks, and a clip-on tie he'd already twisted twice. "If you touch that again, I'll replace it with duct tape," she playfully warned. "It's a little itchy, but that's just part of the formal experience." Leo sighed and attempted to stretch his arms out wide without wrinkling his shirt. He felt a bit overwhelmed. "Magician, you look fantastic. Can I go barefoot?" "No?" "All right." Clara gave him a long. She glanced around and then strolled into the kitchen. When she returned, he had already kicked off his shoes and neatly tucked his socks away. The couch she embraced at Not Today let the piano nurture the kid it was cherished. She handed him a banana and a bottle of water, kissed the top of his head, and he was given 20 minutes to review whatever he chose to play. And outside the town, the banners had transformed beautifully, brightly displayed along the main street. Folding signs cheerfully directed families toward overflow parking. Mingled in a lively atmosphere, children dressed in their best, ready to shine at the Performing Arts Center, gleamed in the afternoon sun, freshly cleaned windows and polished railings giving it a vibrant, modern appearance that brightened the atmosphere. On the inside backstage, Mrs. Aninslee paced with anticipation, as if she were eagerly awaiting something exciting. Canal carried a clipboard adorned with vibrant highlighter marks and had already collected one ukulele and 2 pieces of candy. When Leo arrived at the bars, she greeted him with a curious look, her eyes narrowing slightly at his bare feet. Let out a quiet sigh. "You play third," she said with a hopeful smile. "Can I get a fog machine?" "Let's keep the conversation focused and quiet in the lobby." Alexander stood near the entrance, glancing at his watch with a hopeful smile. The recital had already started, but he was excited to join in the experience he had been looking forward to. He was late, but traffic had come to a standstill due to a parade float accident, and he had taken it in stride. A wrong turn led to an exciting chase once more, this time with the same goose, now accompanied by a friend. Jordan wisely embraced the adventure, dropped him off, and drove away without a word. The usher waved him in, gesturing for him to be quiet. He tried. He truly did. He pushed the door open, and it creaked loudly, catching everyone's attention. A young girl on stage paused mid-hand flourish, clearly immersed in a captivating interpretive dance about the seasons, or maybe bees. Alexander nodded an apology and happily slid into a seat in the back row. A boy nestled into his blazer as the program unfolded, delivered a wonderfully spirited rendition of Ode to Joy, concluding each phrase with a proud stage whisper of "Nailed it." A girl beautifully played a piano during an accordion medley of Disney villain songs. A duet took an unexpected turn when one of the kids forgot their part, leading to a delightful moment for the other. Created a sea shanty, and it was wonderfully chaotic. Alexander kept exploring the program. He was curious about what he might discover, even though there were no composer names listed, just the original composition. Leo Thompson made him pause. He wasn't sure of the boy's last name. As Leo walked out, my stomach tightened with anticipation. He may have been short for 10, but his messy hair added a unique charm to his presence. Curls bounced joyfully as he moved, no shoes on his feet, and the audience chuckled softly as he waved. Once beamed like someone who was completely at ease and sat down at the grand piano as if it were a familiar couch. He cracked his knuckles, stretched his arms, and gave the keys a cheerful jingle. With a quick warm-up, Alexander eagerly reached for his phone, his fingers hovering over the screen, ready to dive into whatever awaited him. Then the first note hit. It was a soft, tentative sound, a gentle chord that just barely emerged. Landed then another fuller with more space around it. And the melody blossomed beautifully. Slowly, as if it were being revealed rather than played, each note felt like it had been waiting, and then it arrived. Those 3 measures. The very ones Isabel hummed. In that grainy recording, the ones she mentioned she couldn't quite finish. Alexander's phone slipped from his hand and clattered on the floor. He chose to leave it there as the music swelled on. It was uniquely personal, not aiming for the usual applause of a recital. unique like a conversation unfolding through a slightly ajar door. The layers created, childlike in parts, raw and imperfect in others. But beneath it all was that same. The motif Isabel had cherished for months before she passed away had thrived in her notebooks, and in recordings she never shared. It had never been performed. Not even to him. His hands gently gripped his knees. He made an effort to remain calm, but the excitement began deep within and surged upward by the time Leo reached the final bars. Alexander's shoulders had relaxed forward. A few people in nearby rows glanced over, and it felt like a moment of anticipation when the last note faded. There was silence, no clapping at first. Just that stunned, heavy pause when something wonderful is about to unfold. Lingers just long enough to be noticed, then it arrives in gentle waves, building into a resounding applause. Clara stood near the side of the stage, clapping with both hands pressed together, her mouth tight with emotion as she embraced the moment. Leo took a small bow and gave a thumbs up to someone nearby, embracing the moment with enthusiasm. The front row then cheerfully waved off stage as if he had just completed his homework, while a few of the others looked on with smiles. The kids congratulated him, and one asked where the song came from. Leo shrugged, saying it just happened. It seemed like a moment that truly deserved attention. Mrs. Anninsley observed him closely, choosing to remain silent, yet she made a note that spoke volumes on her clipboard and informed the next kid they were up. While out in the audience, Alexander remained in his seat long after the lights dimmed, and he embraced the moment, leaving his phone aside and his briefcase untouched. Gazed at the empty stage, reflecting on whether he had ever shared Isabel's melody with anyone, if he had played it, shared it, and somehow it found its way into the world. He hadn't, and he was confident about that the boy had truly experienced it. And Alexander was completely unaware of what it was. The crowd joyfully filtered out in clusters, with parents happily gathering coats and programs, children eagerly tugging at the sleeves of their stiffer-than-usual outfits. Leo found himself surrounded almost immediately. Supporters, fellow artists, and even two lovely elderly women inquiring about lessons he might offer. Clara stayed back, allowing the moment to shine for him. She didn't need the spotlight. Witnessing his joy among strangers was enough. Shaking his hand was more than enough. He seemed completely unfazed, still barefoot, and still going strong. Humming softly, Leo and Mrs. Anninsley lingered near the stage, holding her clipboard with anticipation. As if it had let her down, she blinked more frequently than usual and held a tissue tightly in her other hand, yet remained resolute. When someone attempted to compliment her teaching, she humbly brushed it off with a light remark about the acoustics. Clara, feeling a bit down, was caught wiping her eyes when she thought no one was watching. Jordan had been making an effort to reach out. Alexander will step out for 10 minutes as the car is waiting out front for the route to the hotel. Planned the evening without any responsibilities. But Alexander stood by the wall. His eyes remained fixed on the Nini stage, as if it held the promise of answers waiting to be discovered with enough patience. He made his way toward the hallway where families were gathered. He spotted Clara first. Something about her caught his attention. The weariness in her shoulders, perhaps the way she restrained herself from interrupting Leo's moment, caught his attention as she was familiar with the situation. She didn't push, but allowed things to unfold naturally as he patiently waited for the crowd around them. Leo noticed the boy crouched beside a toddler, enthusiastically showing him how to pretend. Floor tiles resembled piano keys as Alexander stepped forward, ready to make his mark with a confident clearing of his throat. Clara turned toward him, polite yet cautious. "Hi," he said. "I'm Alexander. Reed. I'm on the foundation board for the Arts Center," she said with a nod. "Clara. Thompson, Leo's mom. Your son is doing great. Exceptional, he's persistent," she replied. "We've chosen to move beyond that word. Handful." Leo stood up and looked at Alexander, his eyes narrowing slightly as he trying to place him. "Were you the guy with the squeaky door?" Alexander hesitated. "Yes, nice. That was during." Abigail's demeanor suggests she might be upset for a while, but Alexander almost smiled. "Definitely worth it." Leo crossed his arms. "Did you enjoy the part with the dinosaur?" "There wasn't a dinosaur." Part Leo beamed as Clara shot him a glance, and he responded with a smile. She gave a little shrug and added that she was being subtle. Alexander watched the boy with interest. He revealed more curiosity than he meant to about that piece you played. The last one where? Did it come from Leo? He rocked on his heels. I'm not entirely sure, but it sort of came to me. Not all at once, just in little pieces. Clara stepped in, and he's been humming bits. For weeks, I inquired if it was something he had come across online, and he confidently said no. He mentioned that he dreamed it. Alexander nodded slowly. Can you remember any other parts? That you didn't play tonight. Leo tilted his head, perhaps tapping a rhythm on his leg, then began to hum softly. The tune was unfamiliar at first, but it soon took on a delightful shape. Unexpectedly into a series of notes that caught Alexander's attention, he paused to take it all in. Immediately, he paused as Leo completed his thought, then offered a small shrug, as if contemplating whether it was the right response. Have you played something like this before? Alexander asked. Nope, I haven't quite figured out where yet. It fits. Yet Clara frowned. Is that one of yours? Alexander didn't answer. His mind was already exploring new possibilities elsewhere that night. He stood in front of a storage unit door he hadn't opened in years. The metal groaned as it rolled up, revealing exciting possibilities. Shelves of neatly arranged boxes, most labeled in his assistant's clear handwriting, filled with tax records and tech conference materials. There were archives, awards, and glass cases, but the one he truly desired was tucked away in the back corner. Written in Isabel's hand, Isabel, do not open, he brought it to his apartment. Without thinking, the box had a delightful hint of dust and old paper. The kind of scent that lingers on cherished items, and then leave behind. He opened it gently, as if anything touched too quickly might reveal something cherished. Within were notebooks, cassettes, loose manuscript, sheets, and a few polars tucked between pages. Isabel's handwriting was delightful. Everywhere, fluid and looping, slightly tilted. He ran his fingers over the cover of a. In a small composition journal, he discovered a sheet that captivated him, the last melody. The first few measures were beautifully written out, while the rest sparkled across a second page marked with excitement. Question marks and margin notes. He picked up a cassette labeled simply Voice Humming Draft and slid it into the player with a sense of anticipation. A small player nestled beside the box. The sound arrived softly and with a charming texture. Isabel's voice hummed a few bars, then paused. Wait, she murmured, half laughing. That's interesting. It seems to be in a constant state of flux. She began once more, adding a few harmonies, hesitated for a moment, and then said, I'll figure it out. I just need a bit more time. Alexander leaned in closer, the second line. She hummed in perfect harmony with what Leo had just sung that afternoon, almost exactly. He sat back on the floor, the music still playing. The box open around him like a cherished memory, waiting to be embraced once more. There was no rational explanation. He hadn't released any of Isabel's unfinished work, had remained untouched. With no recordings online and no shared scores, the boy might not have heard it, yet he played it and then hummed the part that Isabel never wrote down. Only recorded once in a cassette no one else had ever heard. How is this possible? He asked aloud, filled with wonder. No one was there to answer. The player clicked as the tape ended. Silence returned, but it felt full of possibilities. It felt like something was on the verge of starting anew. Alexander listened to the cassette 4 more times before finally turning it off. Each time, Isabel's voice radiating with its casual warmth and cheerful humming. Uncertainty brought a rush of disbelief and something else, something that stirred a sense of adventure within him, far more than the mystery was captivating. It wasn't just the melody, but the way Leo had sung that second line exactly as she had, as if he'd been in the room with her, hearing it from her lips. Alexander told himself there was a reason to believe. It's fascinating how coincidences can arise from shared intuition and the subtle influences of our subconscious. There's a certain magic in the way these elements come together. None of it stuck. He had kept Isabel's work buried, and no one knew about Melody. But her, and now this boy. He took his time before calling Clara. He pondered the idea for a bit. For a few days, allowing it to simmer while playfully acting as if he wasn't at work. He hardly. As Jordan glanced at the emails, he observed the moment Alexander took a pause during meetings, when he took a moment to reflect on a legal pad during calls, and especially when he chose to leave early 2 days in a row. On Thursday afternoon, Alexander did something he hadn't done in years. Parked outside Leo's school and waited. Clara finally responded to his email that morning with a short message, providing a time and place. He felt a sense of intrigue about her intentions, whether it was out of politeness, curiosity, or something more exciting, nearer to doubt. Yet she consented to allow him to visit just once. That's what the message said, just once. Leo emerged wearing a towel cape, ready for adventure. With excitement, he spotted Alexander's car and jogged over, proudly wearing the paper crown he made in art class. With his backpack swinging behind him like a playful parachute, Clara followed at a leisurely pace, arms crossed and observing with curiosity. The interaction felt light, like someone inspecting produce. "You again," Leo said with a smile as he climbed into the passenger seat before being invited. "You've been promoted from the back seat?" Alexander asked. Leo shrugged. "Mom. She says I can sit up front if it's not highway. She says I've got a strong neck." Clara knocked on the window and Leo rolled it down for 2 hours, enjoying fruit instead of soda. "I'll pick him up," even though she didn't. With a smile, Alexander nodded as they drove across town toward a practice space, filled with excitement. Had rented a clean, soundproof space equipped with a Steinway, and as Leo pointed out, upon entering, the boy eagerly embraced the faint scent of printer ink and new shoes, wasting no time at all. "Do you have pianos just lying around for fun?" "No, this one is meant for you. For me to practice if you want." Leo took a moment, then he ran his fingers danced over the keys, pressing a soft chord with both hands. "It's not as warm as Mrs. Aninsley's, but it's got a good vibe." Manners. He enthusiastically launched into a delightful blend of scales and theme songs, creatively mixing Mozart with a superhero riff, until Alexander cleared his throat. "Have you remembered more of that melody?" I asked, and I believe Leo shifted into something more serene. "I dream about it. There's something special about the music, and it's not just the notes. There's a woman who hums along, always in perfect harmony. Then I wake up before she finishes. And there is Alexander sitting in the armchair near the window casually observing. What does she look like?" Leo kept on playing. "Curly brown hair, and I imagine she wears cozy big sweaters, smiling as if she holds delightful secrets." The music paused for a brief moment, and Alexander leaned forward. "You've seen her before only in dreams, but I always recognize it's her." He played a phrase, slightly different than before. "She expresses herself through humming, and sometimes she takes a little break, just as the song reaches its peak." Alexander remained silent for a long time. They enjoyed their weekly meetings, which blossomed into twice a week and then 3 times. Clara agreed with a hopeful spirit. As long as she was looped in and as long as Leo was involved. Didn't come home with a watch or a briefcase, but Alexander was on a journey of discovery. He told himself it was all part of the adventure. The boy received encouragement about his potential, and the foundation offered valuable resources. This was a natural investment. And while he wasn't mentoring in the traditional sense, he was still contributing in his own way. Listening, watching, comparing, Leo, of course, embraced it all and joyfully tested the limits. The practice space aimed to set up the smart blinds to open dramatically during crescendos, and once programmed, it was sure to create an exciting atmosphere. Alexander's smartwatch played fart noises every time it received an email, and he only noticed when he was in a meeting with a city council representative. "What's the secret behind your delightful new car leather scent?" One day, Leo asked. "I don't really like those fancy cars at the airport that can make you feel less than great." Just as I walked past, Alexander paused and said, "That's my cologne." It was a surprising moment, but I think I'll switch it up a bit. It's amusing how you give off the vibe of someone who gets frustrated with scratch-resistant labels. The familiarity between them blossomed more quickly than Alexander anticipated. Leo approached the situation with a sense of ease and confidence. Viewed Alexander as an intriguing adult with a unique watch and a set of rules that added to his charm. Clara remained cautious. She attended one session and then missed the next 3, but she consistently checked in, and occasionally, she would send fruit in a Tupperware container with Leo's name on it, adding a special touch to it. Remind Alexander that the boy was still hers at night. Alexander listened to more. Isabel's early tapes were vibrant and brimming with ideas, each one a delightful exploration that sparked her creativity. But one stood out, a file labeled for him, unfinished. The title alone sparked his curiosity. Pause. Isabel had no nephews and no students at that time, and she never brought it up. dedicating a piece to anyone he pressed play. It began with a melody now, unmistakably the one Leo had been developing, but halfway through, Isabel paused and whispered, "I don't know what this is yet. And perhaps it's for later or for someone I haven't met." Then a laugh, gentle and personal. I might seem a bit wild, but she joyfully hummed a fresh tune after that one. Leo. 3 days ago. I played it note for note, and then the tape cut off, but Alexander took over and played it beautifully. Once again, they sat in silence for a long time, reflecting on their previous conversation about kids. Briefly, she had wanted one, but he had said not yet, that they weren't ready. She didn't push, and then she stopped bringing it up. A few months later, she faced some health challenges, but there's always hope for brighter days ahead. Everything else faded away as he realized that he had always believed they wouldn't have children. He never questioned it. But now, everything felt open, and there was a spark in her voice in the way she said, "For someone I haven't met," that tied to him longer than the melody he didn't share with Clara just yet. He was unsure of what to express. But every time Leo sat down at the piano, that beautiful melody flowed out effortlessly, as if it had always been there. Alexander sensed a shift, a familiar weight that brought a sense of anticipation. Buried in the questions he locked away years ago were beginning to surface, quietly at first, but becoming impossible to overlook. Alexander embraced the title of that tape as it played on, inviting him to complete it. In his mind, even when Leo wasn't around, even when the house was silent and the piano untouched, the words were always present. She had thoughtfully left behind a few labels, with most being shorthand for a draft. An unusual rhythm that felt a bit melancholic, yet this one stood out and lingered in his mind. The next morning, he found himself in his office with the blinds closed and a cup of coffee that had gone cold, ready to dive into the review of with quarterly proposals stacked on his desk. He opened a browser tab and began searching, feeling a sense of excitement about the possibilities ahead. Was searching for, and once the question entered his mind, it lingered with a sense of curiosity. Isabel had a brief hospital stay in the final year of her life, and she reassured him that it was just a minor scare, nothing urgent. But he hadn't pushed. He hadn't been around as much. By then, he was in and out of meetings, on planes, closing deals. She expressed a desire for space, and he respected that, believing it was related to the music he created. "I never imagined there was something else." It took just 2 calls to gain access to the old records, one to a friend on the board. In a hospital system, he reached out to an assistant who had a lot of favors owed to him, requesting a record under Isabel's name from 12 years ago for a short stay at a charming private hospital in upstate New York. When the files arrived, the atmosphere in the room transformed as the late-term monitoring concluded, and the patient was joyfully discharged. She made the decision to sign herself out, even though there was no notation of a miscarriage. He reviewed the follow-up records, gazing at the screen with curiosity before reading it once more, and noticed there was no mention of loss. There are no ultrasound results, no Dean's notes, and no surgical notes. Just a peaceful discharge. With a sense of clarity, he stood up and paced the length of the room once, then twice, as Isabel had mentioned. It was a miscarriage, she cried, and he believed her. They chose to move forward without discussing it further. Once more, the pieces shifted into new positions, and he envisioned her in a hospital, gown sitting upright in a bed, face set in that calm, determined way she had when she made up her mind. It was easy to picture her being steadfast. When she felt pressured, she expressed herself clearly and decisively, calmly proceeded with her plans. And he settled back down, exhaled through his nose, then he picked up his phone and called Clara, but she didn't answer. She picked up the phone, and on the first ring, she asked, "What's wrong?" "I'd love to chat," he asked, "not about the foundation, not about music, but about Leo." There was a long pause, then where? They met at a charming little cafe on the edge of town, the kind with charming mismatched mugs and a leisurely pace. Clara wore a stylish jean jacket and appeared to have had a busy night. But she jumped right into action. "I believe he might have some insights. I have a feeling Isabel welcomed a new baby, as Alexander mentioned. I believe she chose not to share that with me. And I have a feeling Leo might be taking a break." He did help Clara with her hands. She tightened her grip around the mug, eager to hear what he had to say before allowing another word to slip out. He explained with enthusiasm. Gradually, he discovered what he hadn't known, and the pieces were starting to come together in a way that created endless possibilities. It was quite a coincidence that Clara listened quietly, with only the occasional shake of her head. Although there was disagreement, she listened intently. When he finished, she spoke with care. And Leo was attentive. I was adopted, and while I didn't know my birth mother's name since it was a closed adoption, I chose not to ask. Questions filled my mind, but I was just so grateful. After years of waiting, suddenly there he was. And I was open to where he came from. Would you be willing to look? He asked. Clara took a long breath, embracing the moment to see if this is real. If this is what you... It's important to recognize that Leo is someone special to me, and that's perfectly okay. Change, I'm here to support him. She gazed at him a moment longer then nodded once. I'll make a few calls. It took just 2 days to confirm the agency. Just 3 more for the paperwork to arrive, and the file is looking good with those standard forms. Signatures, a few redacted notes, and 1 page in careful handwriting that read birth. The mother chose to remain anonymous, but thoughtfully left a sealed letter for the adoptive family to be opened at the guardian's discretion. Clara had chosen not to open it yet. She simply didn't care. It was never something she felt was hers to embrace. Open now. She held it between them. The envelope slightly yellowed at the corners. You open it, she said. Alexander unfolded the letter. It wasn't long. Isabel hadn't explained much, just that the decision had been made with love, that her circumstances were unique, and that she held hope for the child would blossom into a creative and free individual. At the bottom, a single line: if, whenever he plays music, encourage him to complete the melody. Alexander read it twice. Just a week later, he and Clara excitedly shared with Leo that they were working on a fun project. DNA kit just to check something exciting. He seemed intrigued until he saw the box and discovered it didn't include slime or a microscope while they eagerly anticipated the results. The sessions at the practice space continued, and Alexander found himself spending longer hours there, embracing the experience. Mentor as a companion, Leo didn't need teaching. He needed time, space, and support. Someone to share ideas with. And sometimes they enjoyed playing together, with Leo soaring through the air. Melody's Alexander gracefully navigating the low-end harmony, years of growth in his fingers, creating everything with a touch of uniqueness. Offbeat, but when it worked, it felt wonderful. Like clearing dust off an old shelf and discovering something valuable one afternoon. Leo played a variation of Isabel's lullaby, and then turned and said, You always look sad when I play this. Alexander took a moment before responding. It's not bad, Leo said. It just seems to evoke some memories. It reminds me of someone I didn't get to know for very long, Alexander said. I wanted. Leo nodded, as if that made perfect sense. The email arrived 2 days later. Clara opened it first, and then happily forwarded it to Alexander, even without a subject line. Match confirmed. Parent and child. Alexander sat at his kitchen, ready for a delightful time together. He stood at the counter for a while, the message glowing in front of him. And then he happily put on his coat and drove to Clara's house. She was already at the door when he arrived, ready to greet him with a smile. She handed him a cup of tea with a smile, while Leo joyfully played on the floor with a stack of piano-themed playing cards. Alexander crouched beside him. Do you remember that test we did? He asked. Leo nodded. Well, we got the results. Leo looked up with excitement. Did I win? Absolutely. What's on your mind? Alexander swallowed. I'm your father. Leo blinked once, then tilted his head. His head? Really? Alexander nodded. Leo pondered for a moment. That's interesting. But that was kind of cool. Alexander laughed quietly, and Clara, standing behind them, said, Gently, that clarifies the determination. Leo gazed up at her with such hope. You're still my mom, right? She smiled. You couldn't get rid of me even if you tried. Looked back at Alexander. Do I have to call you Dad now? Only if you want to. I'll think about it, Leo said, then returned to organizing his cards. This is going to be great. He's a bass clef with a very distinct haircut. And Alexander looked quite sharp. Over at Clara, who shook her head with a mix of amusement and disbelief. She appeared tired, yet perhaps a bit relieved as the rain began to fall gently outside. First, just enough to soften the air inside, the music lingered, and after years, I embraced a new experience, marking a fresh start. The reality was different than expected. something Alexander had envisioned to share gradually, filled with gentle conversations and thoughtful questions. Answered piece by piece, and then the DNA results came back, bringing a whole new perspective. Time felt unique, heavy in one moment and weightless the next. He saw Leo's face, and every childhood memory he had been unknowingly keeping. Just like the boy tapping his fingers while deep in thought, how he hummed while chewing, how he got delightfully distracted in the middle of a sentence when a melody caught his ear. All those little things he had thought were just quirks now shone brightly as tiny reflections of someone he had loved and lost, someone who he had made a choice without him. But he sat on Clara's couch again the following weekend, enjoying the same tea in the same chipped mug. Leo was in the next room building a marble run along the baseboards, narrating the adventure like a thrilling sports event. Commentator Clara sat across from Alexander, arms folded, her expression a blend of weariness and understanding. I believe he might be ready to hear everything, she asked, and Alexander nodded. She absolutely deserves to know who she was and why. I'm feeling confident about that. Clara expressed her concern about how the choice she made might affect him, even though she didn't leave him. She let him go, as he said, but it's not the same. Clara looked down at her. Hands nodded once, and let's ensure he knows they reached out to him. Before long, Leo came padding in barefoot, his arms adorned with vibrant blue marker streaks from an unfinished art project. He climbed onto the armrest of the couch and waited. Are you sending me to? How about a boarding school? He asked. No, Alexander said. Did I accidentally break your car and my brain working together? No, Clara said, a smile almost breaking through as he crossed his arms. Then why do you both look like you're facing a tough moment? Alexander leaned forward. I have something important to share with you about your birth mother. Leo paused for a moment. He glanced at Clara, who encouraged him to listen, and Alexander spoke slowly, choosing each word carefully. Her name was Isabel. She was a composer. She was truly remarkable, and she was my wife. Leo blinked. So she's the one I've been thinking about. Hearing Alexander's throat tightened. You've been hearing her. Leo nodded in my direction. Dreams humming, sometimes just standing nearby while I play. She is always with me. Before she could meet you, Clara said gently that she made the decision to place. Thank you for adoption. She didn't do it because she didn't love you. She did it because she cared deeply. Leo looked down at his hands, paused for a moment. Then, so my mom was a composer? Alexander beamed. Absolutely. One of the best. He nodded slowly, coolly. So, what do I do next? Clara left the room and returned a moment later, holding the adoption file. She handed it to him with a smile. Sealed envelope. The paper slightly curled at the corners, Isabel's handwriting neat and careful on the page. My son didn't ask any questions. He simply took it and walked over to the piano. They found a bench and sat there for a long time, eagerly anticipating the moment before opening it. Alexander and Clara stayed back, allowing him the space he needed. The letter was just a page that Isabel had written about how she had faced the choice with resilience, knowing that the journey would bring its challenges. She shared her thoughts on music, about how it had always been a beacon for her when nothing else seemed to work. She shared her hope that it would light his path as well, that one day he might hear a beautiful tune in a dream or discover himself playing something entirely new. She had faith that melody held onto the beautiful idea that the notes people left behind lingered in the world, patiently waiting to be discovered once more, and she brought it to a close. With a promise, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered something wonderful, perhaps even more. Me, and I'm filled with pride for whoever you've become. Leo folded the letter and placed it. It rested beside him on the bench, and then he placed both hands on the keys, fully focused and immersed in the moment. He didn't say a word. He simply began to play a piece that had no name. It was unique. Structured or practiced, it explored with a sense of curiosity in the beginning, like someone discovering a new language they were eager to learn. Still learning, but it blossomed bolder and warmer with a rhythm that ebbed and flowed like waves. It wasn't Isabel's melody, and it wasn't Alexander's. It was Leo's, a vibrant mix of everything, full of life and character. He didn't have the words for it, yet he played for nearly 10 minutes, and then the room transformed. Once more, it was quiet. Clara gently wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve as Alexander spoke. Leo remained still. I think I need a minute, he said softly, and they nodded in understanding. and left him outside in the kitchen. Alexander leaned on the counter and stared out the window. The trees swayed gently in the wind, and everything felt just as it should be outside. There. And everything inside him had transformed. For years, he had held on to regret. The form of silence he discovered as he learned to navigate life after Isabel died. He had been hesitant to face what lay ahead, but now he found himself surrounded by those answers. And all he could think about was how much he missed. He looks like her, he said quietly. I always believed he. It seemed like no one replied to Clara, but then he nodded and said, yeah, he does. I should have been there. You weren't ready, she said, and she knew it. He didn't argue. He embraced the moment. Clara poured him a fresh cup of coffee, and they stood in the kitchen, enjoying the gentle thuds. Leo's fingers danced across the keys, creating a symphony of spontaneous sounds, a beautiful chaos waiting to be shaped into something wonderful later. That evening, Leo stepped out of his room, holding the envelope with excitement. Can I keep this? He asked. It's yours, Clara. He nodded with a smile and slipped it into his backpack. Then turned to Alexander with enthusiasm. How about we begin anew? Start over. It's a clean slate, and you have the opportunity to embrace new beginnings. I'm not a dad yet, but I'm excited to learn from you about being fancy and a bit grumpy. Alexander smiled. I think I can manage that. Leo grinned. Cool. Can I call you boss for now? Clara raised an eyebrow. Try again. Leo thought for a second. Fine. Alexander, let's make a deal. If you can put your phone away during lessons, we can definitely work something out. They gathered around the table for dinner that night, enjoying leftover pasta and a salad that still had some life in it. Chocolate pudding from a plastic container may not have been extraordinary, but it brought a sense of comfort and warmth, creating a peaceful atmosphere where everyone felt at ease. To fill every silence, Leo returned to the piano and played the melody again. And this time he embraced the challenging parts, pushing through and allowing it to twist beautifully and stretch into something new. Clara sat on the arm of the couch, listening. Alexander stood by the doorway, calm and present, embracing the complexities of the past. Was the future, and in that moment, the notes between them carried a meaning that was clear and beautiful. Something like, family. The invitation arrived in a beautiful cream-colored envelope with elegant gold lettering that seemed perfect for a special occasion. Clara discovered it nestled among bills and a coupon flyer and almost discarded it, mistaking it for yet another charity pitch. Then she spotted Leo's name in elegant script above the return address for the International Youth Gala in Vienna. With a flutter of excitement, she walked it into the house and placed it on the kitchen table, initially silent as Leo explored. In just a few minutes, with a trail of piano dust and a sock that had slipped halfway off his foot, he asked, What's that? She replied, slid it across to him. It's for you. He opened it and read slowly, and when he finished, he looked up and asked, Is Vienna the one with the delicious chocolate cake? Alexander, who just came in with the groceries, set a bag on the counter. That's one of its strengths. Leo held the letter out with excitement. They want me to perform in a palace. Clara leaned in. They mentioned it's an exciting gala for young composers, truly a grand event. Names Broadcasts have been enjoying your recordings since the recital. It seems that someone may have shared it with them. So Leo, take a moment to read it again, this time a bit more softly. I'd love to have the complete piece, the one featuring her melody. No pressure, Clara said. I want to. He paused, but it needs to be finished first. He gave himself 6. For weeks, each afternoon, he joyfully sat at the piano in Alexander's home studio, pulling pieces together. The theme was already there, Isabel's melody, delicate and vibrant. But now he expanded it, blending in new phrases that seemed to arrive just in time. He added chords that Alexander had stumbled upon it by chance one evening and was eager to give it another go. Leo appreciated how his playing brought a rich, deep sound, reminiscent of heavy weather, adding a vibrant and dynamic energy to the rest of the song. Gradually, it turned into a delightful exchange between Isabel and Leo. Yes, but also between Isabel, Alexander, and eventually all three of them came together, and he made the call. Clara mentioned that the Echo Sonata was the perfect name, and Alexander had his doubts. But he lingered a bit longer by the piano after Leo spoke it aloud for the first time. The trip to Vienna felt surreal from the moment they landed. The city was wonderfully old, beautifully pretty, and brimming with history for any of them to know exactly what to do with it. Clara packed enough snacks to feed a scout troop and still had plenty left over, feeling a bit uncertain about the adapter. Alexander approached the logistics with the enthusiasm of someone planning a grand summit, expertly coordinating hotel bookings. Excited to confirm performance times and arrange for a private rehearsal space with Leo. It's going to be great. Strolled about cheerfully, whistling and eagerly inquiring when he would don the composer tuxedo. The concert hall was magnificent in an experience that seemed almost magical, with chandeliers, velvet seats, and walls that resonated with every sound. On the night of the performance, Clara laced up Leo's shoes and straightened his bow tie with a sense of excitement in the air. Practiced making his posture as dramatic as possible, with Alexander already in a suit. Watch from the doorway, I'm excited, Leo said finally, twisting a finger through a loop in the piano bench. Clara knelt down. That's great. Just play it like you always do. If they don't like it, that's okay. That's not quite right. Alexander stepped closer, reminding us that the music is what truly counts. Leo stood, adjusted his jacket, and looked up at them both. I believe she's going to be there. Either of them asked who he meant when it was time. The hall dimmed. A hush enveloped the audience, accompanied by a few polite coughs and the gentle rustle of programs being folded. Leo. He stepped onto the stage with confidence, paused beside the piano, and gave a charming little bow. He sat down with a sense of anticipation, then placed his fingers on the keys and began. The first notes were hers. Isabel's unfinished melody finally brought to life. He played them slowly with joy, with a sense of awe. He allowed the silence surrounding each phrase to linger just long enough to draw people closer, and then his own voice emerged. Voice dancing through hers with quick flourishes and playful interruptions, embracing small risks that sparked smiles even before they happened. They understood why after that Alexander's chords resonated with a low, steady emotion, yet were filled with a sense of hope. Into the mix, the music beautifully shifted and folded into itself, with each section layered in harmony. Like a beautiful memory, Leo returned to the beginnings. And this time the melody was even more enchanting. Was wholly concluded not in a dramatic crescendo but in a single sustained note that lingered in the air until it faded away on its own. The room remained still, and then someone stood, then another, and another. The applause built gradually. It built gradually until the entire hall was on its feet, clapping more enthusiastically than anyone had for the rest of the evening combined. Clara stood with her hands pressed together, tears streaming down her face, and she didn't even try to stop them. Alexander stayed by her side, seated with eyes closed, breathing deeply. When he opened them, he whispered, "She heard us." Backstage, everything unfolded in a whirlwind as a producer requested a meeting. A journalist sought a quote, and a translator arrived with a clipboard, while Clara playfully swatted at it. Leo stood quietly beside a folding chair, gently holding the edge of his jacket that seemed ready to take flight if he released it. Alexander crouched beside him. "You all?" "Absolutely," Leo nodded. "And I believe that was the very first time I engaged in something that." I felt a sense of excitement when a woman in a headset approached me, sharing that a representative from a major label was interested to offer him a contract. Leo glanced at her, then at Clara, and finally at Alexander with a sense of anticipation. "I'm flattered," he said. "For now, I just want to play and enjoy the moment." The people I cherish strolled back through the serene streets of Vienna that night. The glow of the concert hall faded behind them as Clara took Alexander's arm. Not because she needed to, but because it felt right. Back home, things returned to their unique and beautiful rhythm. Clara embraced extra shifts once more. Alexander relaxed back into work. He rearranged his calendar to make time for Leo's rehearsals, and the piano remained the centerpiece of the house, and Leo continued to write his melodies, evolving beautifully. One bright morning, Alexander lent a hand, bringing a touch of whimsy with unexpected twists and playful little jokes tucked into the words. Clara brought in groceries, and he carried the bags while she sorted the fridge. They moved through the kitchen with a sense of purpose, the warmth that arises from facing challenges side by side, while in the other room, Leo explored something fresh that began as the wandering scale transformed into a delightful waltz and then blossomed into something entirely unique. Clara tilted her head. "What's that one called?" she asked, and Leo joyfully yelled back, "Without stopping, the first day I was found." Alexander paused, one hand remaining still. On a box of cereal, Clara paused for a moment. Then softly shared something funny. How something lost can end up being the thing that saves you. 5 years have passed, but some things never changed. Leo continued to play barefoot and happily resisted combing his hair unless he was offered a little incentive, and still found a way to transform even the most serious recital into something that brought unexpected smiles to people's faces. But the world around him had expanded, his audience had flourished, and his music, while still brimming with mischief and twists that carry even more significance now, not just skill. His name has emerged in programs throughout Europe, accompanied by write-ups from critics who described him as truly remarkable. Instinctive and a bridge between eras, he embraced the essence of connection without being concerned about the labels. What truly mattered to him was whether someone felt something genuine when they listened. He had just turned 15, and his voice had begun to change, cracking mid-sentence, and his sense of humor leaned delightfully into puns. Clara asserted it was karma, while Alexander suggested it was hormonal sabotage. They were both. Indeed. The three of them had discovered a rhythm over time. Unconventional at times, perhaps a bit clumsy, but deeply rooted in something special. Sturdy Leo balanced his time between exciting international tours and the beloved house they all cherished as home. Sometimes he came back from the trip, feeling a bit jet-lagged, but ready to enjoy some waffles and take a moment to emotionally recharge. Other times he walked through the door as if no time had passed at all, tossed his bag onto the kitchen floor, and began playing before even taking off his coat. And family dinners had a bit of an awkward start, but the first few attempts were filled with potential. Filled with perfectly cooked pasta and thoughtful pauses followed by Clara smiling and Alexander glancing at his phone and Leo seeking to spark a reaction from both of them. But over the years, the meals transformed into something vibrant, filled with laughter, lighthearted debates, and spontaneous piano improvisations. When the conversation slowed down, Alexander eventually began. Clara's decision to bring dessert created a wonderful opportunity for Leo to cook with guidance, making his job an exciting experience. He took playlist control very seriously. They weren't a couple, Clara and Alexander. Everyone believed they were, and neither took the time to correct it any longer. But whatever their relationship, it seemed to go beyond mere explanations. They often engaged in lively discussions about calendars. Leo's sleep schedule revolves around the decision of whether Clara should allow Alexander to pay for a new dishwasher, and everything unfolded beautifully. Amid a flow of unwavering, unvoiced support, Alexander had discovered the art of stepping back. Clara had embraced the idea of accepting help when it was genuinely needed, and in the process, they created something wonderful that worked. Alexander had even begun to embrace wearing sweatpants on Sundays, and Leo had captured the moment with photographic evidence. Clara framed it and placed it discreetly on the bookshelf. Now it's time for a new project. Emerged a full orchestral piece grander than anything Leo had ever composed. He had been working on it in fragments for over a year, jotting down ideas on napkins and writing full pages at 3:00 in the morning. The morning buzzed with melodies as he recorded themes into his phone between interviews. He named it the Wildflower Symphony, and it was intended to inspire, to celebrate Isabel, his birth mother, on what would have been her 50th birthday. It was more than just music. It was a vibrant memory, a life story expressed through movement and texture, with subtle key changes and clashing motifs that found resolution when necessary. He eagerly planned to debut it at a spring gala featuring Alexander conducting and Clara narrating between movements, sharing delightful excerpts from Isabel's work, journals, her letters, and even pieces of the original adoption letter he had requested. They were both sitting at the kitchen table, and it felt like a fun assignment was about to begin. Alexander had blinked in surprise. To everyone's astonishment, Clara had choked on her tea. "I can't conduct," Alexander remarked with a hint of determination. "You play bass notes with your pinky now," Leo said. "You're qualified." "And me?" Clara asked. "You tell stories. You always have." They didn't say yes immediately, and they didn't say no either. By the end of the week, Alexander had begun brushing up on his technique, and Clara began exploring the boxes of Isabel's writing, and the project transformed the house sheet. Music filled the living room, and drafts danced playfully onto the floor, bringing Leo's creativity to life. The laptop was always open, playfully half covered in cookie crumbs as Alexander built a mock. Clara transformed the guest room into a creative recording nook, using a cardboard podium to practice her cues and explore new possibilities. Words echoed softly, free from anticipation. As life continued on, moving Alexander's foundation, Leo's idea has blossomed into something remarkable. They provided scholarships to young composers and hosted workshops with funding, creating exciting opportunities for growth and creativity. Public pianos in small towns bring a sense of joy, as Alexander once shared during a leisurely stroll. The park was the first thing he'd done in years that made him feel alive. Clara, for her part, had begun. While studying music therapy, she enthusiastically volunteered at a nearby hospital twice a week, helping stroke patients reconnect with memory through melody. Leo once overheard her sharing that she was doing something that needed no explanation or justification. It just felt right, she said. He was proud of them. And as the concert approached, the excitement of the symphony began to build, creating a thrilling atmosphere that he embraced. He didn't speak about it often, but his habits revealed everything, rearranging pages until they tore, muttering unfinished lines under his breath. One night, Clara discovered that his breath had unexpectedly left whole sections behind. Him sitting at the piano long after midnight, the bench surrounded by crumpled sheets, drafts. He didn't look up when she sat beside him. But I believe I'll find a way to make it work. He said. You won't. But what if people love it because it sounds like her? That could be amazing. Because of me, Clara tilted her head. Where do you think she got her sound from? Leo hesitated. She pulled it from the same place you do, and now you're sharing it with her, which is wonderful. Imitation, that's a conversation. He let out a breath and played a few tentative notes. It feels like she's this. I'm a legend, and I've got that barefoot stage presence along with a unique sleep schedule. You're the kid who created her unique melody, something no one else could do. He may not have said anything, but he certainly noticed. He stopped tearing up his drafts after that. A week before the concert, he tried serenading a girl at school in the cafeteria. He shared a few lines from a love theme he was crafting, and even though his voice cracked halfway through, the girl clapped anyway. Alexander shared an important conversation about timing and maturity, which Clara playfully interrupted by tossing a throw pillow at him. His head held high. Leo expressed his feelings and crafted a beautiful ballad about it. They joyfully performed The Wildflower Symphony on a clear spring evening in a hall filled with people who'd come from all over. Some knew Isabel's name, and some didn't, but by the end, every person in that room had learned something about her through Clara's voice. Alexander's hands danced through Leo's melodies. The final movement was the softest yet. The soft echo of the original theme played gently, almost with a sense of anticipation, like someone recalling a cherished memory they had once overlooked. Leo stood in front of the orchestra and bowed deeply. The applause was long and standing, and backstage, someone eagerly asked if he'd be taking the piece on tour. Perhaps he mentioned it. But it's not quite time for it to be here. First, later that night, back in the house, Clara cheerfully sorted groceries while Alexander happily dried the dishes. And Leo sat at the piano noodling something fresh, something airy and uplifting that embraced a sense of freedom, just notes for the joy of it. It was noted that it had no title yet, but he appreciated the way it felt like a clean page. Eventually, Clara reached her peak in What's That One Called? He paused and shrugged, feeling a bit uncertain. Perhaps the moment after the story concludes, she smiled and then turned her gaze toward Alexander, who was now wearing slippers and humming something off-key, which she found amusing as she said it quietly. How something lost can end up being the thing that saves you. Leo played a final note that sounded wonderfully like a wink and continued on. The next performance of the Wildflower Symphony took place outdoors months after the first in an amphitheater nestled between hills and tall trees that seemed to lean in a bit closer just to listen. The city had invited them to close their annual Summer Arts Festival, and Leo enthusiastically agreed before anyone could finish It felt right, he said. Isabel's music was meant to inspire and uplift, not echo off gilded ceilings. It needed wind, open sky, and people with folding chairs, and picnic blankets and kids who were full of energy during a slow passage. Clara watched from backstage as the crowd gathered with hundreds of people filling the grassy slopes and rows of temporary seating, creating a vibrant atmosphere with many new faces around. They arrived without any memories of Isabel, without tales of who she had been, but they arrived to listen to the echoes of her voice, carried forward by her son. The sun began its beautiful descent behind the tree line, while the stage lights gently warmed the microphones. Buzzed softly. Everything felt like it was filled with potential. Leo wore a plain charcoal suit. Wearing a white shirt without a tie, a charming daisy pin rested over his heart. Small and simple yet full of character. Isabel's favorite flower. He discovered a photo of her once, barefoot in a beautiful field. Somewhere arms out like she was conducting the clouds. The pin felt like a gentle thread connecting that moment, and this one he took his place beside the conductor's podium, while Clara stood just off to the side, her pages neatly arranged. With confidence and poise, Alexander stood in front of the orchestra, ready to lead with a steady voice. When he looked at Leo and gave a slight nod, it was a clear cue filled with potential. Shared understanding. The first movement began with the gentle hum of strings and a playful piano motif fluttering with curiosity. With a sense of excitement, Clara stepped up to the mic and began to read from Isabel's earliest journal, the entry describing how she'd first fallen in love with sound. The violins danced around the words, playful and bright like light reflecting. It was Isabel as a child, joyfully improvising lullabies and tapping out delightful rhythms into furniture, drawing treble clefs in the margins of her notebooks. The movement concluded with a delightful bell tone that echoed long after the final bow lifted. The second movement shifted, and it was warm. Clara read from a letter Isabel had never sent, one crafted with deliberate romance yet free from sentimentality. In her early days with Alexander, she noticed the little things, like how he stirred his coffee with such care and deliberation. Called silence a luxury, how she adored him even when he was unaware she was creating while he spoke. The orchestra wrapped around those lines like a warm embrace, and Alexander's hands moved with a precision that had beautifully softened over time. The third movement was challenging, with a deeper intensity and complex harmonies, reflecting the choices and emotions involved. Clara's voice flowed gently here, each line drawn from that one poignant page in Isabel's file, the one she had left behind. For Leo, she shared her decision to let him go, driven by understanding and hope rather than shame or fear. But from the understanding that love can sometimes involve letting go. The strings transformed into delightful minor intervals, the horns pulled away from the melody. Leo's piano part was delightfully sparse, with just a few notes scattered here and there. Lonely notes in the middle of a larger storm. Clara's voice wavered once, but the journey continued, leading to the final movement. The page turned, and the lights gently dimmed. Slightly. Alexander paused at the podium while Leo sat still, fingers resting on the keys. Awaited as the orchestra began, enveloped in a near silence, a low hum hinting at the original theme, then a slow, deliberate layering. The music rose gracefully, pulling fragments from each of the earlier movements coming together until something new began to emerge. Not quite Isabel, not quite Leo. Something in between, and then it happened. Leo discovered the audio file weeks ago, tucked away in one of Alexander's overlooked folders, the name all jumbled up into meaningless numbers. He almost deleted it before he heard the first second. It was Isabel's voice, just her, humming a short line, gentle and tentative, concluding with a soft laugh. It was just a moment of any melody they knew, but he embraced it, refined the audio, and crafted a progression beneath it. Just enough to. As the fourth movement approached its conclusion, the orchestra gracefully faded into near silence, and Leo eagerly reached for the cue. Speakers played her voice clearer now, warm and steady, found, and behind it, the orchestra rose slowly, providing her with a harmony she had never experienced in life. The crowd remained still. It wasn't a. The song came to an end, marking a reunion where the final note lingered in the air before gently fading away, leaving a moment of quiet reflection. Immediately, the sound arrived. Not a gentle ripple, but a magnificent wave of applause began at the front and joyfully rolled backward as people stood up. Some shouted, while others simply closed their eyes and pressed their hands together. Clara and Alexander were already on their feet, ready for what was to come. Tears streaking down, no words needed between them. Leo turned, eyes shining with hope and understanding. Gazing at them both, "We completed it," he said. Months flew by at the amphitheater. Performance came alive through online clips, interviews, and write-ups that aimed to capture the essence of the experience. But most people who had been there shared that it was an experience beyond words, something you truly felt deep within. Clara opened a small music therapy clinic near the hospital where she has been volunteering, and she kept it simple with just one upright piano and a few chairs. Group sessions share words that begin to spread slowly and then gain momentum, reaching kids, stroke patients, and others who had forgotten how to talk but still remembered how to hum. She let the music do the hard part, and when it didn't, she embraced the moment with a smile. Embraced the quiet. Alexander published a book the following year. Part memoir, part tribute, The Echo and the Flame. He had a feeling it might surprise everyone. The first chapter was all about Isabel, and the second focused on Leo. The rest is sure to be just as exciting. Was about all the moments in between, the things they carried, the things they left behind, and the intriguing, unfinished songs that shaped them all. Leo stayed busy. He turned less and mentored more. He discovered a group of kids who embraced music with their entire beings, just as he did when he was younger, and he offered them his support. A girl transforms a playful jingle into a complete composition, assisting the boy who couldn't sit still and discovering the joy of writing music standing up. He shared the same message with everyone. Don't fix what doesn't need fixing. Fixing and the goose, it never left. Alexander swore it had imprinted on him. It accompanied him on walks, patiently waited outside the foundation office, and even attempted to sit through a board meeting. He gave it a name. Isabel. Clara found this absolutely hilarious. Leo painted it on the side of the beloved original piano, the very one on which Isabel composed many of her early pieces, has been beautifully restored and generously donated. At a local music school, they positioned it in the center atrium beneath the beautiful skylight. A small plaque beside it read, "For the melody that waited." Leo visited once every few months, and he always came. One evening, just before closing, he arrived without any sheet music, sat down and began to play, embracing the spontaneity of the moment, creating something beautiful in the now. Just the original melody. The one that began it all, the one he used to hum in his sleep before he even knew her name, soft and unhurried. Familiar as the notes floated gently up into the rafters as the last rays of sunlight streamed through the glass above, creating beautiful, elongated shadows. Through the keys, the music joyfully floated out into the serene atmosphere once again. If you enjoyed this story, please consider leaving a like. It truly supports the channel, and there's so much more to come. Heartwarming and emotional stories like this inspire you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. I can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your reactions mean so much to me. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next story.